Hello, everyone. All right, it's a few minutes after 9. I think we're going to get underway. My name is Jeremy Martel. I'm the Director of Communications at the Cape Breton Partnership. I'm going to stop sharing my slide here, and I'm going to welcome up my colleague, Danny Mumbercat, to introduce herself and today's topic. Danny, come on up.
Okay, I'm coming. Hold on one second. Oh no, how do I start my video? You can see me?
We see you, you're good to go.
Me? And you can see my screen.
Absolutely.
Perfect, wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Jeremy. So welcome everyone to Immigration for Employers. This is our third session of our little roadshow here. So thanks so much for joining virtually to those communities that we were unable to reach. I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So today we're using the Zoom webinar platform, and as an audience member, you folks can take comfort in knowing that we are unable to see or hear you. So if you need to stand up or stretch your legs, please feel free to do so. A little bit of housekeeping. I'm sure we all have an understanding on how to use Zoom, but we want to make sure that you get the most out of this session. So if you take a look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A tool and a chat tool, which allows you to leave questions for the panelists. So at the end of the session, we'll go through any Q&A. I'll read it out, and the appropriate panelists will be able to answer any questions at that time. The session is also being recorded, so if there's any information that you missed or you'd like to hear again, you'll have the opportunity to do so on our YouTube channel. And we'll also be emailing out any slides if you would like to have those as well. Lastly, if any technical issues arise, you can let us know in the chat function, again, located at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do our best to address this problem. So let's start. There we go. So our agenda for today, we are going to do, or I am going to do a brief overview of the Cape Breton Partnership Immigration Services. Our first panelist will be Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, Ariana Brooks and Kathy Ouellette. Second panelist will be Nova Scotia Labour Skills and Immigration, Chris Kalanko. And third panelist will be the YMCA of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia Works Employment Centre. So we have Karen Fury here today, Scott Purdy, and Maura Ferguson-McDonald. And again, last will be our question period. So we will take the Q&A questions in the chat, and we'll be able to answer any burning questions that you may have at that time. Great. So my name is Danny Mumbercat. Thank you so much for joining this session. I am the Immigration Engagement Coordinator at the Cape Breton Partnership. A little bit about me. I have a background in human resources, specializing in recruitment and selection. So I have plenty of experience assisting with immigration streams for permanent residents. So I have hands-on. My role at the partnership is dedicated to providing guidance and assistance to employers and newcomers and help them navigate the different PR pathways. So these include the Atlantic Immigration Program and different streams of the Nova Scotia Nominee Program. Excuse me. I'm also able to support employers and newcomers with AIP endorsement applications and provincial nomination applications, as well as answer any eligibility or documentation required. Immigration is definitely not an easy subject, and it depends on so many variables. But with my position at the partnership, I'm able to help guide you as employers through the process. So really take that stress and questioning of kind of what happens. Also a part of the immigration services team at the partnership is Kelly McKinnon. She's our labor market and immigration advisor. So she's able to take it a little further than I can and consult with employers to identify options for seasonal businesses, as well as provide guidance and advice on federal programming, as she is a RCIC. But together we do support employers to help fill labor gaps and help employees and employers navigate the Canadian immigration system. Perfect. I also wanted to highlight our coworker, Jessica McDonald. So she's our human resources advisor here at the partnership. So she provides employers in Unama'ki, Cape Breton with human resource guidance and advice to sustain and grow their business. So maybe any small businesses that don't have those HR building blocks, she can help with policies and procedures, recruitment and retention, selection and hiring, and performance management, and more. Great. I always like to start with this slide, the importance of immigration. So Almost 100% of Canada's net growth population will be through immigration by 2035. So if you're not already thinking about immigration, we should probably start. There's not enough people. We have an aging population, more people are dying, and there isn't enough births to replace mortality. And the labor market shortage that you are experiencing right now is likely only going to get worse. Canada is aging, Cape Breton even more so, and we will be competing with the rest of Canada for newcomers for growth. So I always hammer home, we got to start thinking about immigration now, because Cape Breton, we're going to need it. Perfect. And with that being said, I would like to introduce our first speakers, our panelists from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, Hariana Brooks, and this slide's not supposed to be there, Hariana Brooks and Kathy Ouellette. A little bio about them. Hariana is an outreach officer with Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Her role is to provide information sessions and work directly with employers in the Atlantic region that have immigration questions relating to hiring foreign skilled talent. As well, she'll meet with regional stakeholders to find out what the current labor challenges are being faced and inform and improve IRCC's programs and policies. Kathy is new to the team, and she is on the team that's entirely dedicated to the promotion and outreach of Francophone immigration, as well as to support employers and stakeholders looking to hire French speakers outside of Quebec. Kathy is the contact person for this new team in Atlantic Canada, and we will have everybody's contact information available after the presentation. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and welcome from IRCC, Hariana Brooks and Kathy Ouellette.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Danny. All right, perfect. So thank you so much to everybody that has joined here today, and for the Cape Breton Partnership for organizing today's presentation. Essentially, Kathy and I were going to be providing an overview of our immigration services and the programs offered at the federal level. But just to sort of add to our bios, for myself, as mentioned, my name is Hariana Brooks. I am based out of Halifax, and I support employers in both Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. And I'm a first-generation immigrant myself. I came from New Mexico, so home of Breaking Bad and alien sightings, and I've been in the Atlantic provinces for 10 years now. And I'm also joined by Kathy.
Good morning, everybody. So thank you, Hariana, for the introduction. As Hariana and Danny said, my name is Kathy Ouellette. I am newer to the IRCC team. With that being said, I come with 10 years of experience in immigration with the province of New Brunswick, and I'm actually based in Dieppe, New Brunswick. So as part of the IRCC outreach team, Ariana and I's role and responsibility are really to meet with employers and support them. We do that through virtual sessions, in-person session, one-on-one meetings to answer and address your questions and concern. But one of the key aspects of our role is also in meeting with employers and stakeholders. We can capture your feedback and bring that and share that with our colleagues, and that may influence policy or new programming down the road. One of the things that's very important to point out, as you can see on your screen, you see the map of Canada with all the stars. This is where you can find some of our colleagues located across Canada. So as part of our agenda today, we're going to review National Occupational Code, or known as the NOC. We're going to talk about immigration status, temporary foreign workers, the Atlantic Immigration Program, known mainly as AIP, express entry, and we'll address questions and answers at the end of everybody's presentation today. So one of the key things when you are looking at immigration is really to become familiar with your NOC code. And the NOC code is classified by tiers, 0 to 5. And they stands for technical, education, experience, and responsibility. So this is your Google of immigration. Anytime you're looking to search for a job or advertising a position, you need to first start by looking up the NOC code. So every job in Canada, from managerial all the way to entry level position, is identified by a 4-digit code.
So as you can see on the slide, this is essentially translating it for you guys. So a lot of you on this call will likely be HR managers, so you guys can see your NOC code there. And you can see that you are in a tier 0 category of the NOC. We have civil engineers will be more of a tier 1, and these tend to be the occupations with university education. We know that transport truck drivers are very much in need right now, so you might be hiring one of those as well. That's their NOC code there. They're more of a tier 3. And then all the way down to laborers, and that would be the same thing for agricultural or even for trades as well. So when it comes to immigration status, there's a variety of different statuses that a foreign national can hold. Most foreign nationals will first come to Canada and they'll hold temporary resident status. This means they either have a study permit, a visitor record, or a work permit. All of these folks have conditions on their stay in Canada. So this typically means the length of time that they can spend in Canada, how long they can, or who they can work for, sometimes where they can physically be working as well. So these are all limited conditions of their stay in Canada. But typically, people want to eventually become permanent residents. And there's a variety of different pathways, both at the federal and the provincial level, that are available for these candidates to apply through. One of the very valuable assets when trying to apply for permanent resident status is Canadian work experience. So typically that's required. It's not mandatory, but many pathways value that. And once a candidate does finally have permanent resident status, they have pretty much all the same rights and freedoms as a Canadian citizen. So they have freedom of mobility. They can work wherever they'd like. They cannot, however, have a Canadian passport. They can't run for office, and they also cannot vote. After about 3 years of having permanent resident status, they can later apply for Canadian citizenship. So there are 2 main pathways that exist for work permits. So we've got our temporary foreign worker program and our international mobility program. As you can see, the difference between the 2 is that one requires a labor market impact assessment, an LMIA, and one does not. And your very next question is going to be, what is a labor market impact assessment? And I'll hand that over to Kathy.
Thank you, Harriana. So the labor market impact assessment, most commonly referred to as the LMIA, is the responsibility of our counterpart at ESDC, Employment Service Development Canada. So if you are looking at hiring a temporary foreign worker, you need to, in certain circumstances, you will require an LMIA. So if you have a need for temporary foreign workers, your TFW would fall under LMIA. No Canadian or permanent residents are available to do this job. So the LMIA and our colleagues at ESDC will do the research to ensure that the employer has done everything possible to recruit a Canadian, but also ensure that the wages are comparable for the role and responsibility that you're trying to recruit for. So if you're looking at hiring a temporary foreign worker, we're going to walk you through an example where it does require the LMIA. So it's a 3-step process. The employer applies to ESDC for the LMIA. The LMIA has a fee of $1,000. Once the employer has secured the LMIA, they will provide the information to their candidate. The candidate is responsible to apply for the work permit, which is $155. And they're also responsible for the biometric fees, which is $85. So let's walk you through a case study, a scenario. So we have Poultry Limited, and they're looking at hiring processing plant workers. So they're looking at hiring 5. As you can see, the NOC code is 94141. Just would like to point your attention to the second number of the NOC code, which helps you identify which tier that position falls under. So you as the employer would then move on and apply to ESDC for your LMIA. Once the it's one LMIA per person. Once the LMIA has been secured, your candidate would submit their application online for work permit to IRCC. And then they would receive their passport, or sorry, their work permit at the port of entry if they're from outside Canada, and if they're in Canada, then it could be mailed to them.
So let's talk about the other pathway, which I like to call the cheaper and the quicker work permit pathway. So this is the one that's exempt from the labor market impact assessment. So on the next slide, we'll cover who is exempt from the labor market impact assessment. But first, I want to walk you through the steps. So the very first step is the employer determines that they are exempt. Step 2 is the employer will log on to our IRCC employer portal and they will enter an offer of employment. In that offer of employment, you'll include details of the job that you're looking to hire them for, how long you'd like to keep them for, the wages, etc. At that point in time, you'll pay for that employer compliance fee. So as you can see, it's less than 1/3 of the other pathways. So this is definitely the more desirable pathway when it's available. And then again, it's on to the worker to pay for that work permit fee, biometric fee, and submit the application to IRCC. So what you'll notice about both of these pathways is that there's legwork to be done by the employer before the candidate can submit their application to IRCC. So let's talk about these exemptions. We essentially have 4 different buckets that we put them under. We're not going to go through all of them today, but I am going to highlight some of the ones that might be relevant to you. So the first bucket of folks that are LMIA exempt are youth. So any youth, or I shouldn't say any, but essentially there is a lot of youth that go overseas to, say, the UK or Australia. It seems that they're working away and they seem to have no issues with immigration. The reason for that is because there is 34 countries that have made agreements with Canada where essentially youth can either go overseas or they can come to Canada. And it's a reciprocal agreement allowing over 34 countries for youth between the ages of 18 to 35 to be able to work overseas or in Canada for 1 to 2 years. So if you get an applicant from Italy, that's one of the countries that is eligible to come through a youth exchange program under our International Experience Canada class. So again, they'd be able to use that cheaper and quicker work permit pathway. We also have our provincial and territorial agreements. So if you have a candidate that is undergoing a process under the Provincial Nominee Program or the Atlantic Immigration Program, both of which are provincial or are permanent resident pathways, if that candidate is pursuing permanent residence through those pathways, they are eligible for a LMIA exempt work permit, allowing them to work for you even before they receive their permanent residence status. Next, we have our international agreements. So this is when it gets very niche and a little bit more tricky. And those are one of those ones that we're happy to clarify on more of a case-by-case basis. But essentially, most people know of NAFTA, which is now named CUSMA. And so, for example, candidates from Mexico that are, say, professionals or technicians or contractual service suppliers are able to come to Canada a little bit easier through this LMIA exempt pathway. Last but not least, we've got significant benefit, our significant benefit bucket. So we've got our intercompany transferees. So say there's a multinational company, they have a bunch of engineers in India that they'd like to bring over to Canada. They might be able to use this opportunity to transfer over their staff. That being said, we want to talk about mobilité francophone, which right now is a very hot topic because we recently made it so that this is available for any job seekers that are filling positions at tier 0 through 5. So this is a huge opportunity because essentially it means that you as employers, you don't have to speak a lick of French whatsoever. The only thing that's important is that the candidate does, and they're coming to fill a job. So when you're looking through your recruitment, you'll scan through all these resumes. If you see somebody that's speaking French, that's your opportunity to use that cheaper and quicker recruitment pathway. So as of a couple of weeks ago, we opened it up to all occupations. Prior to that, it was only tier 0 through 3. And so that's when you say, okay, but I'm having a hard time finding somebody that speaks English, let alone speaks French. And that's when I let you know that Canada does host a job fair that takes place overseas on an annual basis. While I understand that most employers can't always go overseas for this job fair and find candidates then, that being said, we do keep a list of all the candidates interested in coming to Canada. So if you do reach out to myself or Kathy or our Paris office, we'll be able to connect you to the folks that have this list of candidates that speak French. A lot of them are also bilingual. And you can get sent a short list of candidates that may be applicable for your job. So let me walk you through how this pathway works, the cheaper and the quicker one, and work permit pathway. So in this case study, our company is called Build Up. They are a local contracting company, and they provide a job offer to a fluently bilingual HR manager from Haiti, in this case. So this HR manager, as we saw the knock before, is 10011. The very first step is that the employer will submit their offer of employment in IRCC's employer portal. They will pay for that $230 employer compliance fee, and they will receive what's called an offer of employment number upon completing that portal submission. Then they hand it over to their candidate, and the candidate submits the application to IRCC. The application itself looks very similar to the previous work permit application process. And as you can see at the bottom there, the normal work permit processing time for Haiti is about 14 weeks, right? That being said, the government of Canada knows for a fact that it is the most competitive to find occupations at the tier 0 and 1 level. For this reason, we offer priority processing for work permit applicants that are filling a tier 0 and 1 position. So if you're hiring this HR manager, you could essentially see that processing time cut in half for that candidate. And again, same thing, once it's been approved, the candidate will be notified and then they'll be able to come over to Canada. And I'll hand it to Kathy to walk us through work permits or what it looks like.
So as you can see on your screen, you see an example of a work permit that's currently blurred out. But some of the things that we want to point out about the work permit is that you as an employer have the right to request to see the work permit. And what you're looking for on the work permit are what are the dates? What are the expiry dates, the validity date of the work permit? Is it a closed work permit, an open work permit? And closed and open, the easiest way to remember is an open work permit does not identify an employer on the document. If it does identify company poultry limited, that would be an example of a closed work permit where the candidate can only work for Poultry Limited as an example. If you are an HR professional, I strongly encourage you to always request to see the work permit and also keep a document in the HR file. And you also want to make sure that your employee is always in good standing, so they always have a valid work permit. So I touched briefly on open work permit, but you do have access to a pool of candidates already here in Canada who hold work permit, open work permit. So if they show up at your organization, you interview these individuals, you can hire them to start right away. So what are those pools that are available for you in Canada? The Ukrainian nationals that are currently in Canada hold a 3-year open work permit, which means they can work for any employer anywhere in Canada. Spouses of work permit holders also hold open work permits. So for example, if you have an international student and their spouse has accompanied them to Nova Scotia, they are, as Ariana likes to say, they are the fortunate one in this situation because they have access to an open work permit. So they, again, I keep repeating, but it's important to realize open work permit, they can work for any employer anywhere in Canada. You also want to consider your recent graduates. So there are a lot of international students here in Nova Scotia, in Cape Breton. And once they finish their education, they can apply for a post-grad work permit. And the length of time could be anywhere from 1 to 3 years for the post-grad work permit. So when it comes to permanent residency pathway, we are not going to bore you this morning by going through all of these programs and all of these options. But the important takeaway is that there are various pathways. And when you are hiring for nationals, is you may use different pathways for different scenarios. In some cases, you might hire somebody through AIP. You might hire somebody on a post-grad work permit that wants to transition to permanent residency. So you might be using the Atlantic Immigration Program. So the key to retain is there are options for immigration and know where to go to get the right information. So under the Atlantic Immigration Program, this is a pathway to permanent residency which when you are nominated by the province of Nova Scotia, you become LMIA exempt, which means you can apply for a work permit, arrive to Nova Scotia, start working while your application for PR is being processed. Now, the AIP is available for almost all occupation levels in tiers 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And an added benefit to being a designated employer is once you've gone through the process with the province of Nova Scotia, you will have direct access to an account manager at IRCC where they can answer your questions and support you. And you have access to an account manager for 1 year time. Here, Anna, this is too small on my phone. Can you cover this one?
Yes. So the other pathway, so actually going back to the Atlantic Immigration Program, I will mention that we're joined by the province, I believe again today. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm realizing that there's nobody from the province. Can I get a confirmation from either Danny?
Yeah, Chris should be here. Chris, can you
Chris
hear
should be
us?
here.
Yeah, he's here.
Okay, perfect. Just before I go and cover
Yeah.
the Atlantic Immigration Program in full. So we're gonna leave the bulk of the Atlantic Immigration Program process to Chris. And we're going to speak about express entry. So express entry is a different permanent resident pathway that's available to candidates. This is considered to be our fastest pathway to permanent residence. How this pathway works is the candidate themselves will go online and they will create an express entry profile. In that profile, they're going to be listing all the details of how proficient they are in speaking in English and French, their education level, do they have work experience, was it in Canada, etc. All of this information will give them a score, and that will be their express entry score. So once they have the score, I'll also highlight the fact that job offers can be beneficial to increasing their scores. So that's how you guys as employers come in, is that if you'd like to support an express entry candidate, you can offer them a job offer and they can update their profile and say, now I'd like to get some additional points, and the system will automatically generate that for them. So as you can see at the bottom, that's our step-by-step. Candidate creates the profile. Then they'll be submitted into a pool of candidates that are eligible to apply through express entry. Only the people that have the highest scoring points will be invited to apply. As of 2 weeks ago, we actually changed this, and it was announced that we will also be doing a category-based selection. So it's not just the people with the highest score. We've also identified 5 different areas that are considered to be our priorities right now. So it's in all of the occupations and sectors that you can imagine. So healthcare, construction, I think there's 3 others, like I mentioned, that will be offered the opportunity to come through, even if their point scores aren't as high as they traditionally would have had to be been. So once they've been selected, they can apply for permanent residence. So the job offer that you would have to be providing to the candidate would have to be a full-time and non-seasonal job offer for at least 1 year, and it has to be in what we call a skilled job. So this would be tier 0 through 3. So walking you through what a case study would look like on that is we have our company build up. So that contracting company, they have their HR manager. They've been very happy with this candidate, and they would like to support them to gain permanent residence through express entry. So the candidate, they go ahead and they create a profile online and they receive a score of 400, which is actually quite good. If you guys are ever interested, you're more than welcome to create a free profile to see how you rank and if you'd be invited to apply. And so once they've created that profile, as you can see, the candidate, they're going to be receiving 50 additional points because they are fluently bilingual. So just so you have a sense of the advantage that that gives to candidates. The company build up will then provide the candidate a valid job offer. So they will update their profile and they will receive an additional 50 points. At this point in time, the candidate now has 450 points, and this might have been the reason why they are now invited to apply, because they now have a very high score. That being said, they might have also been invited on the basis of the type of occupation they're coming to fill. Once they've been invited, they can submit their application for permanent residence for processing. This is a little bit more involved than the work permit process. You're also going to be looking at providing things like police certificates and medicals and things like that. So that will all be submitted at that time. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy to speak a little bit about our global skills strategy.
Thanks, Ariana. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the global skills strategy, but I do want to point that this is a beautiful tool and pathway that can be used if you are hiring or looking to hire individuals in the tier 0 and 1. It's very specialized skill set that you're looking for, that niche market, that needle in a haystack talent that you're looking to find. There is immigration pathway for that stream. And the beauty of it is it touches different things. It can also apply if your organization has hired or purchased specialized equipment, and the company from abroad needs to come over to your plant to set up this equipment and also train your staff on this said equipment. That would fall under a short-term work permit under this pathway. And again, another key resource under this program is that you get access to an account manager. Some of our colleagues at IRCC are strictly responsible for this program, and they are there as well to answer all your questions and support you. you. This program, just a quick overview, since we mentioned ESDC earlier, is a partnership and an agreement between IRCC and ESDC. You do require referral for these pathways, but luckily the Cape Breton Partnership is a referral partner, and should you qualify for any of these options, they would be sending the referral to us at IRCC, and then we would take it from there, and the team would support you through the process. So we've covered a lot of information in terms of immigration this morning, in terms of how to access immigration talent, the different pathways. But one of the key elements to immigration is definitely retention. Individuals need to feel as they can connect with your community, and you as a potential employer have a huge role to play in that. So you can do that by getting to know your candidates, cultural competency training for your staff, and other ways. You know, it can be things like they arrive in the middle of winter from Mexico. They probably don't have the appropriate winter jacket, as an example. And just because the store labels it as a winter jacket doesn't mean it's the right kind of fabric for winter. So things to keep in mind. Now, as part of the AIP program, candidates do have access to settlement services. So they are involved in what's called settlement plan before their arrival. So each candidate or family knows what they need to do, and they are supported in terms of where to go to register their children for school, where to get a social insurance number, and so on and so forth. But again, you as an employer, as community partners, everybody plays a role in the retention of our newcomers. So you want to know more? Go ahead.
So essentially, we've gone over a lot of information about programs, how you guys as employers are involved. We don't expect you to be immigration experts by the end of today's presentation, but what we really do want you to take away from today's event is that there's an array of different organizations and services available to support you. So this includes Danny at the Cape Breton Partnership, as well as Kelly, who are very much more hands-on than we can even be in terms of supporting employers. That being said, we are available for employers. If you have a case that's taking way too long and it's way over processing time, you're more than welcome to reach out to us and we'll be able to take a look at that. You also have your resources at the province. You'll be meeting Chris. As well, settlement provider organizations in your area are going to be your best friends. So they're going to be the ones that can support candidates in terms of helping them improve their English and French language abilities. They can also get the kids enrolled in school boards. We know that's a lot of paperwork. We also know that enrolling in a bank, that can be tricky as well. How do you get a credit card? What's a credit score? A lot of countries don't even have that. So they will also be your support system as well. And they can help your candidates find candidates that maybe even speak other, the same language as them. And that can be very valuable in terms of retention. So we're going to be, Danny's going to do the honors of sending out this presentation after this event. So you're going to have infinite resources that are available to you, infinite links that will support you. But again, please do not hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions whatsoever. So without further ado, I'll hand it back to the partnership.
Thanks so much, Ariana and Kathy. It was so nice to spend the last couple of days with you, and we really appreciate your knowledge. So next up, we have Chris. Chris, can you hear me? Making sure that he can hear me first. Hold on. Oh, he just unmuted. Chris, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Beautiful. I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do your brief bio here first. Let me hang on 2 seconds. Great. So Next up from Nova Scotia Labour Skills and Immigration is the community navigator, Chris Kalanko. He is responsible to recruit, develop, and cultivate productive relationships with newcomers interested in migrating to Nova Scotia from other parts of Canada and abroad. Community navigators will provide the direct contact with individuals seeking more information on working and living in our province, providing timely and knowledgeable responses. The community navigator will work as a bridge to connect new arrivals to key community support, employment resources, and contacts throughout the region. So without further ado, Chris.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Harriana and Kathy, if you're still here, for giving us that presentation. It's been a pleasure over the past few days to learn about what you're doing. We're in a bit of a combination here. I'm having some tech difficulty, so I'm doing this by phone, and Danny's going to go through my slides. So we'll get through it though. So basically, I'm Chris Kalanko. I'm the community navigator for Cape Breton. The LSI has recently hired community navigators to kind of be a connector to newcomers and life in Nova Scotia, whether that be information about our programs or information about working or living in Nova Scotia, how to access community supports, how to access recreation, and all the stuff around retention that is so vitally important for us to not only attract talent globally and across Canada, but to retain it. So the province has a very lofty goal of increasing our population to 2 million by 2060. And we plan to do that by attracting 25,000 people per year. So you can go to slide 2 now, Danny. And as you can see on this slide, there's been 12,650 permanent residents that landed in Nova Scotia, and a permanent resident landing, that's someone who obtained permanent residence. So that would not include an international student who is still here on a work permit or a student visa. A landing is an actual permanent resident. And we've also achieved 14,079 interprovincial migrants to Nova Scotia, which is quite high, and it's growing every year. So what that means is last year we did overshoot our goal of 25,000 a year, and in order to do that, into the future, we need to communicate to our senior leaders what we're hearing from employers, what positions are in demand, and then we also need to communicate to other branches within government about housing and transportation and all those other challenges that newcomers face once they land here in Nova Scotia. Next slide, Danny. So here you can see that immigration in Nova Scotia, there's 2 jurisdictions. There's the Canadian side of immigration, and there's the provincial side. The Canadian side of immigration is the government that has the final say into applications and entry into Canada. So any student or potential permanent resident is going to finally apply to the federal government, who would determine if they're eligible for PR. But before they get to that process, the provincial government has a role in identifying economic paths that we need to take care of in order to achieve our economic goals. So that's done through the Atlantic Immigration Program. It's done through the Nominee Program, as you'll see in the next slide. And then we nominate and endorse candidates who then take that certificate and apply through the federal government. It's important to note that provincial programs don't have any fees. So if you're interested after this call in learning more about AIP and applying, there's no cost at the provincial level to apply for designation or endorsement. The cost comes in once the applicant applies to the federal government, and fees there. But of course, if you hire an immigration consultant or a lawyer, you may incur fees there, but there are no fees paid directly to the provincial government. You can go to the next slide, please, Danny, slide 4. So the Nova Scotia Nominee Program, and some of you may be familiar with it, it encompasses 9 streams, and these 9 streams all have different eligibility criteria, and they all address different labor needs within our province. Some of them speak for themselves. For example, like you have a physician stream, which is geared towards physicians, an entrepreneur stream, which has 2 streams within that stream. For example, there could be an entrepreneur abroad that wants to invest and open a business in Nova Scotia. So there's a pathway for them to obtain nomination. There's also a path within the entrepreneur path for international graduates, which have slightly different eligibility requirements. International graduates in demand is a stream for very specific NOC or tier codes, and occupations in demand also is a stream that is very specific to certain streams. So the best way to learn about them, I could spend a whole day going over each individual stream and going into the detail of the eligibility for each stream. But the best way to handle that would be to go to novascotiaimmigration.com, and you can click on each individual stream, click on the application guide, and see what's required. Typically, if you have any international hires working at your enterprise, they will be very knowledgeable into these streams, but they may have questions. And if they ever do have questions that you don't feel like you can answer, you can certainly direct them to me. And if I can't answer them, then I will find someone who can. So that's the nominee program. And that's one way for candidates to get. Can you go to the next slide, Danny, slide 5? So the process to go through the nominee program, it's a candidate-led process, which means that the candidate is the one who leads the application. And they have to, and once they meet the eligibility requirements dependent on the stream that they're applying, they submit the application with employer documents. So that would be, it's in the application guide depending on the stream. And then they submit that to the province. The province would then issue a nomination certificate, which the candidate could then take and apply through the federal government for permanent residency. So that is it's a candidate-led process, which means there's nothing your enterprise has to do with Nova Scotia Immigration other than hire the candidate. So any candidate, for example, who's on a postgraduate work permit or an open work permit, you're able to hire them without anything else. And then once they meet the requirements and gain enough experience within that stream, they're able to then apply for nomination through that path. What you will probably find is if you do have international hires that they're likely telling you about the Atlantic Immigration Program. And the Atlantic Immigration Program is something that's a little bit different. You can go to the next slide now, Danny, slide 6. It's employer driven, which means that it's incumbent on the employer to first apply for designation through the province. And as a civil servant with the province, I'm unable to actually help you through the application. But as Harriana mentioned, Danny and Kelly at the partnership are fantastic resources that you could take advantage, and they can help you through that process. And basically, designation entails applying, and the province will review your business to make sure of things that that you're in compliance, like you have no outstanding labor standards issues or occupational health and safety issues, that you are an actual real business in Nova Scotia with employees, and that you operate from a Nova Scotia address, and things of that nature, to ensure that when we do designate employers under the AIP, that they are in fact Nova Scotia businesses, and it's not a tool for, say, a company that's not located in Nova Scotia to just register an address in Nova Scotia and then participate in the AIP. In order to do that, you have to actually be conducting your business within the region and contributing to the region. So the restrictions for designation are not really strict. It's just basically to ensure that you're able to get designated. Once you get designated, you'll be issued a letter from the province. Then you can begin the endorsement process. And the endorsement process, it would entail, for example, cultural competency training, like Ariana mentioned. It also would have to be an endorsed job that fits within the AIP. So, for example, Tier 5 jobs would not be eligible under AIP, but they may be eligible under some nomination stream. So it's important to make sure that the job that you are endorsing is eligible under that stream. Information on that is within the AIP link on novascotiaimmigration.com. You can see that there are some positions listed that are ineligible, and that list is a dynamic list. It's constantly changing. It's in response to the supply of labor we have. It's in response to what we hear from employers through our employer engagement team. And so it's important to check that. And if you do want to participate in AIP, but you see that one of your positions may not be eligible, just give me a call because you may have 2 or 3 positions. One may not be eligible, but 2 may be eligible. That wouldn't default you from being able to participate in the AIP program as long as you have one position that is endorsable. So then once you get the endorsed position and you get through that process, the candidate will receive what's called an endorsement certificate, similar to the Nova Scotia Nominee Program process. And then they will submit that application to the federal government for PR processing. As you can see on the slide there, it also says work permit approval optional. And we put that in there because at times, as you know, processing at the federal government can take a long time. It's possible that the prescribed processing time for PR is greater than what is left on their work permit. So the candidate can submit an application for a work permit extension along with their PR approval to ensure that they will remain in status for the duration of the time that they're waiting for their PR to be processed. Go to the next slide, Danny, number 7. So the brand in Nova Scotia, we recently changed our brand. It used to be Room to Grow, which many of you now can understand is a challenge to sell because of the housing challenges that we have in our province. I know personally, my wife is an international person, and she came to Cape Breton more than 15 years ago as a CBU student. And at that time, there wasn't the same housing pressures. Public transportation was more of an issue then than it is now, but finding an affordable place to live was not a major challenge, which we all know is a major challenge now. So the Room to Grow initiative had to be adjusted, and what we decided to do is to go with a build your life in Nova Scotia and be your authentic self in Nova Scotia brand. And we're playing on a lot of our assets that we have, very welcoming, warm communities, and access to world-class recreation and infrastructure, with also world-class outdoor activities and beaches and things of that nature. What we are finding is that the competition is fierce for international workers, as many countries are facing demographic challenges with aging populations. The housing crunch is not unique to Cape Breton. It's something that's happening all over Canada. So we understand that as we grow and as our housing stock becomes stretched, that people may have to live farther away from their work. They have to commute longer. So there are more challenges now in attracting talent. And like my colleague from the federal government, Kathy, mentioned, it is important that employers understand that when they bring someone in from outside, especially if you live in a rural community, that these newcomers need support, not just support in getting to and from work, but also support in feeling included in their communities. And the Cape Breton Partnership has great assets there that I'm sure Danny will talk about later, through the Cape Breton Connector program, through the Cape Breton Welcome Network, as kind of assets to help people feel more welcomed in communities. And as we know, if people feel more welcomed, it's more difficult for them to leave, and they're more likely to stay. So retention is key, and it's incumbent on all of us to participate in helping make our place more welcoming. Next slide, Danny. So recruiting, this is a big part of what we do at Labor Skills and Immigration. We attend national and international recruitment events. Sometimes they're sector specific, sometimes they're not. For example, we were at the healthcare job fairs in Calgary and Toronto to look for nurses and doctors. We were also at Emigratiebeurs in the Netherlands, which is not really sector specific, but it's the largest job fair or immigration job fair in Europe. And I think they saw more than 11,000 candidates a day. If ever, as an enterprise, you want to join the province at one of these events, you can reach out to me. We're currently planning our sessions in the fall and beyond. And if you'd like to participate with our team abroad or somewhere else in Canada, that's fantastic. But we understand also that is quite the cost. And if you would just like to send a position that you have open that you're having difficulty filling, that you'd like us to present to international candidates, then we'd be happy to do that as well. So if that's something you're interested in participating in, you can reach out to me at some point after the presentation, or just drop a note in the questions that that's something you'd like, and I'll get that at the end, and I'll respond to those after the presentation. Next slide, Danny, slide 9. So this is me. I'm the community navigator for Cape Breton Island, and my role, I provide AIP and nominee program information for candidates and employers, and I do that through forums such as this. I'm also available if you have more specific issues or questions that you'd like to ask and you'd like me to call me directly. I'm always open for that as well. And also the international hires within your business may have questions about the community or things that you might not be aware of. Feel free to send them my way as well. And the next slide. And just continuing what all navigators do, and we also have understood since this position came this year that the reality of the resources newcomers need in, say, Cape Breton is different than in Halifax, and is different than in Yarmouth, is different than the Valley. Every region has their own kind of mosaic of resource and assets in each community, and each community has unique challenges. So we try and be the first point of contact for people interested in making Nova Scotia their new home. We answer questions on programs and about the communities in which we live, and we help provide customized job search resources for them. What we don't do, I'm not a regulated immigration consultant, so I'm unable to give you advice. So if you were to say, ask me, should we do this or this, I can't give you advice on that. I can give you information on the programs, but I can't give you advice. We're not an employment service, although we can connect you with candidates at our recruitment events, and we do. If we know that you're an organization that's hiring, and it's okay that we share your position with possible candidates, we do that. But we don't. We're not a job matching service, so to speak. And we're also not settlement providers. We at LSI we do fund settlement organizations. So, for example, the Y and the Cape Breton Island Center for Immigration. But they also have limited capacity as well. So, like I mentioned before, at times it is incumbent on the employer to make sure that they do provide a welcoming environment for those that they hire. And sometimes that could be as simple as, showing them how to use the bank, or, letting them know, oh, you're interested in tennis. Well, why don't, let me connect you with someone who can, register your kids for tennis, or register you for tennis, or, anything that helps get people integrated into community is important to keep in mind when hiring international candidates. Something that I would like to mention again before I end up is that through the AIP, it's not a quick solution to solving your employment needs. It is a long-term planning solution. So it does take a little while from the time you apply for designation to the time you're approved, and then you get through the endorsement process to actually get your candidate in place. So treat it like a long-term planning tool and not a short-term planning tool, and then that way it will bring more success to your enterprise because if it's thought of as a tool that is a quick fix to something, I need someone tomorrow. It's as everyone knows, immigration is not a quick process. So it does help to make sure that you've done the planning in that area. And the last slide. And this slide doesn't have my contact information on it, but feel free to reach out to me at Chris, KRIS.Kolanko, KOLANKO at novascotia.ca. And I'll answer any questions that you have. And if I don't have the answer, I'll find someone within my department who does have the answer. And if they don't have the answer, then I don't know. So thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to hearing your questions and connecting with you all over the near and long-term future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's so great to see how we all can work together to help employers and newcomers as much as we can. So our last presenters are from YMCA of Cape Breton and Nova Scotia Works Employment Center. So on the Zoom, we have Karen and Scott. They are both local employment engagement specialists. So the employer engagement specialists support employers in recruiting and retaining employees, accessing training tools, HR tools, labor market information, and government programming, which includes wage subsidies and so much more. But I will let them explain exactly what their position there is. We also have Maura Ferguson McDonald, who has been working at Nova Scotia Work NEDAC for over 15 years. She's currently a job developer and employment support practitioner. Maura participates in the life of her community and is rewarded by working with persons with disabilities. Maura's current position requires extensive communication and service to the public, local employers, not-for-profit groups, community organizations, and other federal, provincial, and government departments to develop and promote skills and learning opportunities for unemployed individuals of Cape Breton Island. So with that, we will welcome Karen and Scott from Nova Scotia Work.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Karen?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Just want to make sure I'm booming through here.
Good to go.
All right. Let's see what we can do here. Hopefully get the right one. Probably not, but you never know. Here we go.
Yeah, you can see it, Scott.
All right, let's go with, I'm gonna get the full screen mode here. All right, so I'm Scott. I'm one of the employer engagement specialists with YMCA of Cape Breton. And we are just one of many employment service centers across the province that is funded through Labor Skills and Immigration / Employment Nova Scotia. So we serve in 7 locations, so 4 here locally in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, so 2 in Sydney, 1 in Glace Bay, and 1 in Waterford. So as Danny had mentioned, I'm an employer engagement specialist. I cover primarily Glace Bay, Dominion, New Waterford, and points in between, and Karen serves Sydney and surrounding areas. And basically what we do as employer engagement specialists is we help small to medium-sized businesses, so employers with less than 500 people, organizations that don't have an HR department per se. So it can range from like a mom and pop convenience store to perhaps a startup construction company, a startup plumbing company, startup electrical company, those types of businesses. And what we do is we provide HR support. So by no means are we trained HR professionals. We leave that to the HR professionals themselves to assist us where need be. But really what we do is we connect employers to, hopefully, fulfilling their job vacancies. And it's certainly been a challenge more than ever before, obviously, with what you have heard in earlier presentations today with our older demographics, our population is aging, and with that, that has certainly created some challenges in certain employment sectors. So we work collaboratively with other employer engagement specialists across the province. So we share best practices, and we help each other out from time to time. If maybe there's a job fair happening, we will promote each other's job fairs, that type of thing, any employment opportunities. So that's sort of an example there. And we report information monthly to our funders, which I mentioned is Nova Scotia Labour Skills and Immigration. So we report on things like barriers. So obviously a barrier could be with the housing crisis. So I know in my monthly reports, sometimes I mention that, housing is certainly, I guess, a hot topic these days with rents going up. And it's yeah, I mean, there's not enough housing to go around, not just here, but in other parts of the province too. Access to reliable transportation. So those are just a couple of key barriers that we often see, and trends too. So we've been noticing employers over the past little bit, for instance, in the restaurant sector, they are in need of cooks. So prep cooks, line cooks, even chef positions. In the construction sector, the need for carpenters, for instance, in the healthcare sector, the need for professionals such as continuing care assistants, licensed practical nurses, registered nurses. Those seem to be ongoing challenges there, and early childhood education as well. So those are certainly in demand positions that many employers are looking to fill across the province. So we report this information monthly, and so we have what's called a smart sheet. And in sticking with the smart sheet, we do assessments. We do intakes and assessments on employers. So if an employer reaches out to us, we would just ask a series of questions, really just to gain a better understanding on what their needs are. What are they looking to accomplish from a hiring standpoint, and how can we better support them with HR tools and the training resources that are out there. All of that is available online, but there's an HR toolkit we can send employers, gives them information ranging from doing a proper onboarding, hiring process, the interview process, and that's just scratching the surface there. So it's a very useful and practical tool, and that's just one of the resources that we provide. And of course, we assist employers for the most part in helping to hire, train, and retain the staff that they are looking to fill their needs, their vacancies. So it's a pretty big ask. And when employers reach out to us, that's what we try to do, is to gain a better understanding on their business and their aspirations, I suppose, and what are they looking to accomplish? Are they in growth mode? And if so, if they're looking to grow their business, then there are training opportunities in the way of hiring incentives that are available. And I'll touch on those in just a little bit. So the role of an EES, an employer engagement specialist, I mentioned the assessments. There's the intake, I suppose. I guess it's more of a, how do we say, a shortened version of an assessment. So we just ask a series of questions to ascertain what their needs are, and then the assessment itself, it's a bit more in depth. We try to gather as much information as possible and report this information via what's called the smart sheet, and then that way our funders, Labor Skills and Immigration, can use that information however they use that information, and look at different hiring incentives, maybe if they have to switch something up in terms of policies, procedures, those types of things. But yeah, our services are free. So we offer free advertising on the Nova Scotia Works internal job board, and as well on our social media page, our YMCA of Cape Breton Facebook page. And we help in creating job descriptions and recruitment of potential candidates. So obviously the employer must complete the screening. And in some cases, what we've done, and Karen can attest to this, I mean, there was one employer, Karen, where you had worked with, and they needed some help in interviewing some candidates,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
we were able to, we can't actually jump in and do the interviews for you, but we can provide you with some kind of examples of what key questions you can and cannot ask. And at this time, we had an employer that was a very new business, and it was the very first time that they were actually performing interviews. So I was able to actually reach out to somebody else within the community that could assist this employer with performing the actual interviews. So this is just one way that we work together, and we work collaboratively with other organizations within the community. So in our role, Scott and I aren't able to be that dedicated person that would be someone that you could rely on to do your pre-screening or to do your interviews, but we can prepare you for doing all interviews. We can, review the importance of the due diligence as far as doing your reference checks on any candidates that you're looking to actually hire. So as Scott mentioned, we're not anyone's complete dedicated HR person, but we certainly have an abundance of tools and resources that can help you in that area. And probably our most ask from any employer is today, like Scott mentioned, is to help with recruitment. So secondly would be wage subsidy programs. So there's a lot of different hiring incentive programs that employers can certainly tap into. And for the most part, because you're small to medium-sized businesses, you don't necessarily have that time to research what's out there and what's available to you. So that's our role as an EES, to be able to provide you through that assessment with the tools that you will need in order to be more productive, I guess, and be more profitable. So I guess we can kind of lead into the next screen, Scott, which would be a little bit of information on the various wage subsidies. This one here, we kind of more or less did review. So our centers provide services to aid, we said, businesses and major in any of their needs, such as the recruiting and managing and developing your talent. There's also different training opportunities that you can certainly tap into, and we'll review those on one of the next slides coming up. So I guess we'll move on to the wage subsidies, because that's probably our next most important ask. So the START program, I'll just quickly review, is probably one of the most utilized financial incentive programs that we're often asked about. So it is a program that will help offset the cost for any small or medium-sized businesses or social enterprise or any non-for-profit organization that's actually willing to hire an unemployed Nova Scotian. So when we say unemployed, it would be somebody that's either completely unemployed, or they also could be considered what we say underemployed, which means that they're working 19 hours or less for another employer. So the funding is available to cover things such as wage incentives, some training costs, as well as some equipment. So employers, in order to be eligible, must have operations that are located within Nova Scotia, and the positions must also be available in Nova Scotia. So it wouldn't be a program that an employer that's actually located in another province, such as Ontario, that doesn't have a physical work location in Nova Scotia would be able to take advantage of. So the successful candidate that you choose for this program, like we mentioned, must be unemployed, and they cannot be an existing student. So it could be a new graduate, but it couldn't be a new student that's returning to post-secondary studies in the fall. So the funding program, it will encourage employers actually to hire Nova Scotians that are unemployed. The employment must be for a minimum of 30 hours per week. And the short-term and seasonal jobs that some folks are interested in, because we do have a lot of seasonal employers, they may be eligible if they help the employee develop the skills that will improve their future employability. So it will make them take those transferable skills that they've gained from working for you to provide them to be employable maybe down the road for another employer. So the funding is a big question that's often asked of us. So people do reach out, and the first question they're going to ask is how much am I going to be able to receive? So unfortunately, that's not a question we can actually answer for you, because that's actually determined by the funders, which is Employment Nova Scotia. So it is based on a case-by-case situation. And 3 of the key areas that determines what financial assistance you would receive would be the wage that you're offering. They also look at the employee's current skill sets that they do have and how long the employee has actually been looking for work. So we'll go to the next screen, Scott, and I'll finish up that one and then you can take over. So for START eligible candidates, so if you don't actually have somebody that you're looking to hire, but you're looking maybe to participate in the START program, we can certainly help you with the recruitment of this potential candidate. So as Scott had mentioned before, we're not actually, it's important to know, a job matching company. However, we will do our best to attempt to help you find that qualified candidate for the program. Sometimes we have candidates within our centers because, like we had mentioned, there's probably 50 centers across Nova Scotia. So we have case managers, we have job developers, and we have employer support practitioners that do work directly with these job seeking clients. So we potentially could have someone within our centers that are actually looking for employment opportunities, and they could be that right fit for your organization. So as far as a candidate, they must be unemployed and seeking full-time employment. They must be a resident of Nova Scotia and a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. International student graduates are actually eligible for these requirements. However, there are certain guidelines, and we will provide you with the link for the START program and guidelines. It's roughly about a 20-page document, but briefly, I can just let you know that as far as international students, they must have studied within Nova Scotia for a 2-year period, and the employment offer must be for a minimum of 1 year. Do you want to take over here, Scott? Or
Yeah,
the JCP?
so
okay.
In continuing with the hiring incentives too, job creation partnership is another one. So that is typically geared for nonprofit organizations that have a specific project in mind. So there has to be a defined start and end date and be distinct from the organization's day-to-day operations. So an example would be a food bank. Maybe they want to hire someone to develop a community garden, and that was a project I believe the Glace Bay Food Bank had undertaken, and I believe their project may have been, or their food or their garden may have been damaged by Storm Fiona, but anyway, that was a project that they did. And Two Rivers Wildlife Park near Marion Bridge, they do numerous job creation partnerships almost every year. So there's always certain projects that they have. So that's just a couple of examples there. In order to be eligible, candidates must be either unemployed or they have a current EI claim or they have received EI benefits within the past 60 months. And I think there are other restrictions too. I believe another one is you must have had some sort of labor force attachment within the past couple of years, as in working within the past couple of years. And there's another restriction there, something to the tune of you had to have earned at least $2,000 a year within the past, I think it was within the past 10 years or something like that. Anyway, we do have the fact sheets available if anyone is interested in learning more about the job creation partnership, and Karen mentioned the START program too. It's a comprehensive document. We just scratched the surface with that. Another popular hiring incentive is graduate to opportunity. So there is a GTO coordinator based in Halifax. Her name is Rohini, and she promotes this hiring incentive throughout the province. So that is her role. So under the graduate to opportunity program, sometimes I joke around, I call it good time oldies, but anyway, that's from a previous job I had years ago. Not going to get into that. So it's for obviously graduates of post-secondary institutions. So they have to have had completed their studies within the past 12 months. And eligible employers could receive up to 25% of the first year salary and 12.5% for the second year. So I guess the only downside to that, if I call it a downside, is it is a 2-year commitment. And they could get 35% if the graduate is a member of a diversity type group. Okay. And the other item of note here, the annual salary must pay at least $35,000. So that's graduate to opportunity. And I don't know if anyone can see this. I don't think my slide is in full screen mode here, but so I don't know if anyone can see that. So that's just a list of the hiring incentives that are currently in place for the province under labor skills immigration. So there's what's called apprenticeship start. That's through Apprenticeship Nova Scotia. Mentioned the graduate to opportunity program here. And there's also something else. This is more geared towards, I would say, employers more so in the Halifax, Dartmouth area. The Innovate to Opportunity program. It's a hiring incentive for employers to hire masters or PhD graduates. So really it's focused on the research and innovations job sector. And then I touched on the Job Creation Partnership. Another one here is the Student Summer Skills Incentive Program. So what has to happen there is if employers are interested in that particular program, they need to apply for the following year. So by, I believe, mid-December to late January 2024, this is when this type of program will open up here. And I believe employers would receive up to $9.10 an hour, $10.10 an hour if the applicant is a member of a diverse group. And then we talked about the START program here. So that is all online under Nova Scotia, Grow Your Business. So that can easily be found there. And getting back to this. Look at that. Yeah, 8 to 14 weeks, the Student Summer Skill Incentive. So yeah, just mentioned the wages there, $9.10 an hour or $10.10 an hour if the student is a member of a diverse group. And yeah, so it must pay the student at least minimum wage. And then we talked about the application process. So for 2024, it'll open in mid-December of this year. And then there's all kinds of training opportunities as well. For employers, they may not know that through Skills Online Nova Scotia, employees can receive many free courses on everything from Microsoft Office, including Excel, to computer skills, basic computer skills, sales skills, even HR skills, just basic information. So there are thousands of courses online for free, Skills Online Nova Scotia. Another one here is what's called WIPSI. Workplace. Karen, do you know the full name of that?
Yeah, Workplace Innovation and Productivity Skills Incentive.
Yeah. Now, this is something that I haven't dealt much of in my year plus tenure with the YMCA, Nova Scotia Works, but it is a grant that supports the development of new skills to help businesses increase their productivity, their innovation, and their, I guess, overall competitiveness in the marketplace outside of Nova Scotia.
I can give one example, Scott, if you want me to, because I know it is something that's not a lot of employers are actually familiar with, but it is a program that will help you with training your employees to improve the productivity and competitiveness of your business. So there was a local bakery, for example, that had purchased a new piece of equipment, and it required them to have their staff to be trained to be able to utilize the this new piece of equipment. So they were able to receive funding to have a trainer to come in and actually train the employees on this new piece of equipment.
Oh, was that like Fadgens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all about production and making them more profitable by, being able to train their staff on new policies or new procedures or new equipment. Yeah.
And similar to WIPSI, there's workplace education as well. So it just provides business skills, training to business owners. So that would be things like leadership, financial management, social media, things of that nature. And as I mentioned too, all of this stuff can be found online. We've got the access to it if need be. And then how to apply for funding. So employers, if they want to apply for funding for any hiring incentive, they have to have what's called a labor market program support system account, otherwise known as LAMPS. So they would have to have an electronic funds transfer direct deposit form, and they'd have to register online. So they have to be a registered business. They have to have a proper business number. And then from there, they have to have a LAMPS ID created, and that is how they would apply through funding, whether it's START, whether it's a JCP, it has to be through the Labor Market Program Support System. Then once you are a registered user, you can apply for funding using the self-serve capability. And if there are any issues, then we always encourage employers to reach out directly to Employment Nova Scotia toll-free 1-877-223-0888. And I think if I can just bring up something here, if I can, I don't know if I'm able to, if I can move this, here we go. Yeah, so those are just some of the forms there. I don't know if everyone can see that. That's the direct deposit form through LAMPS. And the other one here, so this is what they would use to apply for funding. So there's the joint stock registry, CRA business number, number of employees, et cetera, and then that's one of the pieces that they would have to have there. So that is, I think, for the most part. Oh wait, geez, the Opportunity Fund, forgot about that. So what that is a program that is entirely looked after by our Opportunities Fund coordinator that we have on staff here at Welton Street in Sydney. Her name is Kelly Wales. So if you're asking who would be eligible for this Opportunities Fund, really it's any person who identifies as having perhaps a permanent physical or mental disability that limits their daily activity. And the individual has to be able to work in Canada, so they have to be a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or maybe they've been given refugee status, and they would have to go through Kelly, who looks after the Opportunities Fund there. So Karen, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that.
No, that sounds good. It's the difference in with this application process would be different from the previous ones that we mentioned, where this one is not actually administered through LAMPS. So Kelly, our program coordinator, would be able to assist you with the application piece on that. So
yeah, and so yeah, she can answer any questions that employers have. So if there is someone perhaps that an employer has in mind that, there is a disability, that they know of, someone that they want to bring on, well, then this program could certainly fit that mold right there. And there's our contact information there. So we have 7 locations all over Cape Breton Island. So I mentioned the 2 locations in Sydney, Glace Bay, 106 Reserve Street, New Waterford, we're on Heelan Street. And then we have a location in St. Peter's, one in Port Hawkesbury, and one in Inverness too. So we cover the islands pretty good. And then of course our neighboring Nova Scotia Works Employment Service Center, Northside Employment Resource Center. Maura Fergus McDonald is going to speak in just a moment, but NEDAC, they cover primarily North Sydney, Sydney Mines, Victoria County. So they have locations on King Street in North Sydney, as well as Badek, Shabocto Street, and they have a location north of Smoky in Ingonish as well. So for our intents and purposes here, we have 3 employer engagement specialists, including myself and Karen, and then Debbie Martel, she covers Port Hawkesbury, Inverness, and Richmond County. So that is how to get in touch with us. And yeah, you can find out more information online through that link there, workplaceincentives.novascotia.ca HR toolkit. So I mentioned the HR toolkit before, which is a very useful and practical tool for any employer that does not have an HR team or an HR department per se. So that pretty much does it for us.
yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks so much to Karen and Scott. Maura is just pulling up her face there now. So if you wanted to share your screen, Maura, we'd love to hear more about your position at NEDAC.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to meet with us, and we respect the fact that businesses are incredibly busy people. Hopefully we can make this presentation as uncomplicated and painless as we can. And hopefully you'll get some valuable resources to take away. So as Dana introduced, I'm Laura Ferguson McDonald. I work at Northside Employment Resource Center as a job developer, employment support practitioner. So who Nova Scotia Works, who are we? We're a government-funded nonprofit organization to help the people of Nova Scotia to look for a job, get training, and be ready to. We offer many resources that people can use without getting charged for it. So the services we provide are employment program that Scott and Karen have touched on. We help create resumes and cover letters. We have access to computers and other electronic assistance needed for training purposes. The universal design is in, I believe, all of the centers across Nova Scotia. So they are designed to help people maybe with text to read, for people who have vision loss, for those who might have attention deficit, they may need to have the speech recognition, or those who have hearing loss may need that. We have an updated job board showcasing the available job vacancies. That is usually looked after by our information resource specialist, but it's important that I keep up to date with that as well. And as well, there's technical assistance where it's needed, as some folks aren't able to do that. How we help employers. So we do advertise free jobs on our Facebook page. We're on Instagram, all of the media that are popular today. We are help developing competency-based job description. So I believe Scott and Karen highlighted on that we can help employers with that. I help with matching client skills with employers' needs. Employees transition support during closures or layoffs. One of the biggest ones I can attest to that would be when Magna closed here on the north side. So we actually had set up a center specifically for those with that closure. Requirements and referrals to potential candidates, employment maintenance supports and retention, and as well as provide the wage subsidies programs in which Scott and Karen have highlighted. So we help the job seekers by helping them to find out about what is the labor market, access to Nova Scotia Works digital channel, which will soon be called My Nova Scotia Account, whereby you'll be able to access everything from your driver's license to MSI, your health card, and under one umbrella. We provide training and courses to be job ready, provide information about the top skills in demand, which is provided throughout our whole center with different people. Access to different toolkits to help them with resumes, cover letters, interviews, and job search. So as a job developer, I'm responsible for creating the job opportunity for those who have difficulty marketing themselves. A job developer makes a crucial link between the job seeker and the local business community. So most of the time I work with persons with disabilities or people who have multiple barriers. The employment support practitioner provides a variety of service-specific employment support for a client who are employees or volunteer. The role of the employment support practitioner allows us to work at the pace of the candidate this support could last for a few days, several months. There's no real time limit. Some people may be with me for quite a long period of time. So as a job developer, we do research and identify companies, industries, and growth sectors that are higher in order to access the job posting and uncover the hidden job market. So we still believe in the hidden job market, which is, for some reason or other, employers may not advertise on, in whether it be on the website, Indeed, wherever they would like to apply. So sometimes I still encourage people to go directly into the company. So we effectively pre-screen and match job seekers to appropriate employers. So a lot of time as a job developer, we work with folks that have multiple barriers. And as we know from today's session, this includes newcomers. They cross barriers before coming to the country, and those barriers continue as they try to immigrate to our area. At Nova Scotia Works, we try to welcome them into our center and make them aware of the resources that are offered, and hopefully make their transition a little bit easier. There's a fairly detailed intake performed at the Nova Scotia Work Centre for the candidates, so that we can perhaps work with them and best find out where they would like to work or what skills they have. So we tried our best to our ability to vet the candidates, referrals according to what the business needs. We'd like to be aware of the employer's needs and our regarding employees. I like to pre-book with employers to see what they would prefer to go, if they would prefer I go to their office or come to mine. My preference is if an employer is welcoming to have a tour of their facility. I really find that as a great idea, because it gives me an idea of what the employers, what their facility is like, what they may be offering for position, and that way there it makes it easier or maybe a better referral for me. We'd like to know from businesses how to best refer, how they prefer that a client would how they would best refer an individual to their company, how they would like them to apply. And we provide support to the client during the transition to employment, assisting the client to reach their maximum level of capacity. And a lot of times we provide the assistance to multivariate client post-employment to ensure successful attachment continues to allow the client to sustain long-term employment. So that, and sometimes that could mean that I would literally get on a bus with the candidate. I would go to the workplace with them, job coach, for as long as is needed or able to. We like to think that we work with the business to ensure that the follow-up is not intrusive to their operation. And so there's where, like, the job developer and employment support practitioner mostly works with the employee, whereas the employment engagement specialist work mostly with the employer. So together we can be of assistance to both. I will often go to my employment engagement specialist here, Derek, who will help me if I ask them if they're an employer that may be looking for something that my employee is able to do or has the skill for that position. We like to say we do not drop and go. We continue to follow up with both the employer and the employee to assist with any supports that usually are of no cost to the employer, to make sure they're successful and it's a win-win for everyone. One of the programs Scott shared with us is the START and the apprenticeship START. So I'm working with a person who in his country was an electrician and completed many complex projects, but because of the different codes in North America, he is not able to work in that field here. But if he were to find an employer, he would start as a first-year apprentice, which would be good for the employer because they would be eligible for a $5,000 wage subsidy, plus another $5,000 wage subsidy, because this person falls under an unrepresented group. Plus, they could possibly be eligible for the START. And after this session, I meet him with the husband and wife team who have their permanent resident status. I met them in collaboration with the Y-Reach, Cape Breton Center for Immigration, and then through the Department of Community Services. Then they entered into a work program with the Cape Breton Partnership. And the Works for You program meant that they had, I believe, about 6 to 8 weeks of training period. And from there, they were given, I believe, 14 weeks where the coordinator went out and sought employment for those people. So this gentleman was able to find employment via the Cape Breton Partnership Works for You program. And he worked with this company. That company then hired him with the START program. And after the START program ended, unfortunately, they weren't able to keep him on, but because of they had different reasons as to why they was not able to keep the person on. But then he was eligible for EI. So I actually assisted him with his EI by literally walking over with him into the Service Canada building, because even though he came a long way with his English communication, there were still things that he was not able to really understand. So I said, well, we'll go together. So now he's on EI, and today when we meet, we're actually going to discuss the SCB program. So the SCB is for, and because he's considering his opening a business. So he's eligible for the small business. So whereby, hopefully, if he opens his business, he'll be able to keep his EI for the first year while opening that business. So that will be hopefully a very good thing for his visit today. During his first visit with me, his English communication was a struggle, but today he's doing very well. His written emails are immaculate. He's always so grateful for everything we can do, always thankful for all the little things. And he stated he has cousins and friends in the US, Toronto, encouraging him to come there. But he said, I like it here in Cape Breton. So I'm going to do my best to keep him and his family here by assisting with the value of knowing the resources that are available to them. One of the things too was we never chatted a little bit about the start marketing letter, which sometimes an employer may see that start marketing letter. So that is given to those people who would be eligible because they're unemployed. So if you see that start marketing letter, that's what it's all about, is that they're hoping the employer will take advantage of the fact that they may be eligible for the START program. I have worked closely with Kelly and the Opportunities Fund and have had great success with this. As Karen mentioned, it's a great program with a very quick and easy application that's intended for people with disabilities, but it's a great initiative for employers to take advantage of. We are constantly trying to educate ourselves about the community resources by visiting other agencies, attending their functions, attending events like that are hosted by organizations such as this one with the Cape Breton Partnership, Chamber of Commerce, the job fairs, any business opening. We believe our program may not fit employers' needs, but maybe there's another agency that may have programs that would. I believe working together with other agencies and resources, we could put employers in contact with the agency representative that may benefit for them. I believe working together results in increased opportunities for the candidates. And making employers aware of the services they can participate in to benefit themselves as well as the candidates for hire. And knowing that the community employers' needs is also an important part of our role. Again, collaboration of all would be beneficial for a successful outcome. Follow up and giving support to both the candidate and employers until it's no longer needed is crucial. I once had an employer say working with people with disabilities has a little more work as a manager, but it's also learning experience. You realize that every employee has limitations and strengths, no matter who they are. So in closing, I'd just like to say that we do hopefully have, lots of as I say, the people here that will assist with all of these programs. I'd like to in close and say that people with disabilities have a low absenteeism and 72% retention rate than others. Most accommodations maybe have no cost of anything and are simple. We just hope that employers know that we're there and they can ask for these things. And research shows that inclusive workplaces are more energizing places to work and actually more profitable over the long run. Hiring people with disabilities has been known to enhance the company's teamwork and improve the dynamics in the workplace. And for me, it's just, there's always success stories, but one that I feel like that when they come into the center, I like to see them through to the very end. And I've had time when it may have been maybe totally out of the content, but if I can't help them, then I certainly reach out to any organization that may help. And it's so beneficial to know many different resources. I currently, in November, met with 2 women, and we started as a group of 3, and we are now up to 30 different people in this organization, just so that we can obtain the resources and be able to supply employers with these resources. Thank you for today.
Thank you so much, Maura, for your presentation. Just click stop share, that would be lovely. Wonderful. Can you stop sharing your video? I'm going to share my screen and do a couple of slides on Cape Breton support and services. I just wanted to remind everyone, so we got about 7 minutes left, so I will go through my support slides pretty quickly. But I do want to have some question and answers. So again, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom. There's also a chat function. Please feel free to put your questions for any of the panelists in either of the chat resources, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions as best as we can. So Cape Breton Partnership supports and services. First of all, we have the Cape Breton Job Board. So I like to explain the Cape Breton Job Board as a Indeed, but only for Cape Breton. So it is owned by the Cape Breton Partnership, and it's Cape Breton jobs only and Cape Breton employers only. So if you are looking for employees, you can post your job for free. You go in through the employer portal. It's actually attached to the NOC code. So Hariana spoke about the NOC code earlier. So what you can do if you're looking for, let's just say, a cook, for instance, you can go through, put your posting for a cook in there, and it asks for the NOC code. You can type in cook, and it will actually populate the 63200 code. And anyone that is a job seeker that is looking for, let's just say, a cook job, you'll be able to connect with them because the NOC codes are able to correspond. So it's a great resource. It's also a recruitment approved for AIP if you do need to recruit for any of your positions, along with, of course, the job bank, and Nova Scotia Works has job board as well. So please use local boards if you are going to be searching for local talent. We want to keep people here in Cape Breton. That's the goal. Last partnership support here is the Cape Breton Connector Program. So what this does is it matches community and business leaders, known as connectors, to local and international graduates, newcomers, and other qualified professionals. So you as employers, we would love to have you on as connectors because you are the industry masters, subject matter experts. So you would come on as a connector, and what the coordinator would do is match up a student or a newcomer or a qualified professional in the area of your expertise. And you're able to connect with them, let them know what it's like working in Cape Breton in your particular industry, and hopefully you're able to connect them with other people in your industry. So it's just building networks, and hopefully the individual will be able to solidify a job after all the network connections are made. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining my session. Thank you again to all of the presenters. We will have slides sent to everyone that has signed up for the session. So they had tons of links in there. Ariana had a plethora of resource links. We'll have everybody's information. And at any time you're unable to connect with any of the presenters, please just connect to me. My email is super easy. It's Dani, D-A-N-I, @capebretonpartnership.com, and I am more than happy to share your question with any of the panelists. So again, thank you very much, and I hope to speak with the employers soon. Take care. Bye.